Hey, what's up? I'm just tapping in with the video. I'm actually doing this on a new device, and so I'm gonna see if if I can get a little bit longer video than some of the other ones have been. How long it'll let it run. Just so like one thing is that I read a book by there's a man named Tim Grove. I think his family is from India. His father was so he had I think he had at least one other sibling, and then he had a mother and a father who were in love, like who actually supported each other, like back in the day, like when people were really down for each other, through the good and the bad. They were coming out of India, that family, and I think that there's something to be said for arranged marriages, where you might think that oh man, here go someone telling who and how to love. But if you think about it, some of the way that you get your introduction to people, like be it through like family, there's something about the causation, and then also the background and the footing that would have to be attendant of your family actually being comfortable with someone being appropriate for you in your range of development, as being a good person for you to develop with. That's like romantically speaking, but I actually had a prearranged. So I grew up with a family. My earliest memories are with this family. Like I remember when I was this family was like they're from the same part of Africa that I was from, that my father's from, and our fathers met in the diaspora. That means like Africans living abroad in the same metro area where I'm at now, as college students. And my father told me that when he saw that man, he knew he was from that same country. He didn't have to say one word. He knew he's from that country. Some regions in Africa, you can kind of flesh out a little bit where someone's from, if you're familiar with the ethnicity, but also the diverse and respective ethnicities together and collaborating that would attend somewhere. So like, I think maybe some people, you might be able to tell if someone's from East Africa, like maybe Somalia or Ethiopia. My first girlfriend in high school, if she were to come on this channel, I hope she would appreciate me calling her my girlfriend. But we started off kind of, we were in like the same math class, and we kind of like, we were aware of each other. But for some reason, when I got to be a senior in high school, I started hitting for more phone numbers in high school. I cleaned up better around phone numbers as a freshman, when I had my good instincts. And then as a senior, when I was starting to get like something about, like, people say that people smell money on you. What smells better than money is freedom. Like oh man, like these fools are about to be up out of here. So I cleaned up a little bit better. But me and her we spent like time on the phone, and then we had some dates. Like she had a car back then. She had like a Jeep Cherokee. And I remember there's this other girl. This girl was the girlfriend of my best friend that I've referenced different times on this channel. They had like this weird thing, like they were always like somewhere having to do something with each other since middle school through high school. They weren't completely in love, but they weren't completely out of love. They were just something, they were associated together. I've said in other videos that when you come into a relationship with someone, like whether physically or even emotionally and socially, you're somewhat vulnerable to each other. Just like you can contract different things, good and bad, by coming together. You can also contract different associations with one another, good and bad, that can also amount to injury, all the way up to injuring your physical person. So the social liability and viability of coming into proximity with people consistently, publicly, is as significant almost as the physical contact, as a part of that, if not more. But so yeah, these two are always like that. But then that girl was when we were freshmen, she was like that. The girl that I was dating, she pulled up. She was actually kind of bold. She was beautiful, and she was beautiful. She knew she was beautiful, and she didn't have a problem with you having a problem that she didn't have a problem that she was beautiful. So she was like, kind of like it's actually kind of beautiful. Like now that I think about it, it's kind of like opposites kind of really do attract. Like she was kind of like she's like this badass thing. Like I know pushover, but I'm still a sexy bitch. Like no disrespect to females or female dogs, because I think that both are beautiful, and I didn't mean that tongue in cheek. But But yeah, so she's like, yeah, fuck you, what you got to say about it, and I'm sexy, and I'm cute, and so, you know what I'm saying, so like that kind of vibe. And I was just like, I probably the one of the greater things about that I have going is that I always accepted people and respected people. So from that standpoint, I was well known in school, because I was never one to put on. I never felt comfortable putting on airs like yeah, we're at a party and we're all in our cool mode. Now I'm not gonna say I wouldn't default to trying to act cool when I was coming up, but I wouldn't be cool for the sake of being cool, or I wouldn't be cool in your face for the sake of being cool, or like when this one and that one is talking about this one and that one, I wouldn't get all up on board because yeah, these ones and that ones are talking about that one, so it must be cool to talk about this one and that one. That was never my vibe. So I was never comfortable being fake, and as I could feel being fake. And some of that very friend of mine that was my best friend, he was an actual like street savvy person, like from a young age, because I think his father may have been incarcerated coming up, so he grew up around certain elements of a lifestyle, and he also was very, very gifted intellectually, in a savvy sense, like, for example, he's the one that taught me to wear a hat, like, because I was born in the state where I'm at now, the metro area, and then I relocated to the Southwest for my dad's schooling, and then I came back in middle school, and I was one of these guys that would like go outside in like all kinds of weather. Damn it had to be like that. It had to be something. I'm just gonna chill out for a minute, and I'm gonna take this. I was gonna make that meditation exercise, but I was one of those people that had to bucket. Like, I had to be like. You could actually say that was one of my points of developing into an adult, is when I would be like, I'd be like wearing like no hat in wintertime, like new to winter, like snow is cool. So I was the type of person that thought snow was cool. So that shows you that I'm from out of town, like where I was at, even though I was born somewhere. And then I'd be like I was all about basketball, so we lived on a college campus. And me and my friend would walk across this large boulevard. It's actually a famous boulevard that I want to reference in this video a little bit. It was actually the seat of if you've ever heard of The Great Gatsby, or damn, I should know that author's name. Sinclair Lewis, I think. He lived about 3 miles down from there, about 4 miles down, a mile past our school, a mile and a half past the school that I want to reference that I went to high school at, a mile past 3 miles past the middle school. 3 miles past the high school was a famous row of mansions. That whole boulevard that I'm referencing is full of mansions. Then also this college campus that I and my best friend grew up at, and we would cross this college campus in the dead of winter to get to a gym that was like our safe space. It was actually called the Sweat Box because it was on the third floor, and it had like a ceiling in it, like a glass ceiling, and it would heat up like a greenhouse. And it'd be I actually passed out. One of my first times passing out was I was training in there all alone, and then I walked home, and then the floor just came into my face. So I don't know if I died or I passed out or both, but I know what it feels like to collapse of exhaustion, to show you how I can't work hard sometimes when I put my mind to it. But me and my friend, we would either be crossing that boulevard, or we'd be walking up this alley, a little bit of a sketchy alley in like a college campus, to go up the hill to two gas stations that were across each other, like a big middle finger to each other. And we'd have no shame about going to one or the other for the better product. The one closer to our side of the street, it had the best ice cream. Like, it would have like those strawberry shortcake ice creams, and then strawberry shortcake chocolate version ice creams. And the better part of it was actually the bottom of it. Like, the whole thing was good as hell, but the bottom of it was like a little bit fatter and like a little bit more cream. And then so my other friend that I started this whole tirade about, that I was introduced to by my family, he didn't have a shame about jacking me and my friend. We appreciated how damn good the bottom of those strawberry shortcakes were, and that my other friend would try to jack me for the bottom of it, or jack mine before I got to the bottom of it. My other friend could understand how big of a problem that would be if I wasn't as much of a pushover and a nice guy. But we'd walk up the alley, and he'd be like, man, you know you're bogus not putting a hat on, man. You know you gotta put a hat on, man. What are you doing out here without a hat, man? Come on, man. You gotta put a hat on, man. What, you trying to catch a cold out here? He would talk like that, man. Like, we were little kids in middle school. He's like, man, you know your dumb ass need to put a hat on right now, man. What's up with this thing? Yeah, he would talk like that, man, just like sober like that. Like, man, that shit ain't cool walking outside without a hat, man. That's how motherfuckers catch a cold, man. That's how he would talk to me. But he didn't use quite that hard of language. I can't put on as smooth as he would talk, because he was smooth. He was cold like that. But so he gave me a lot of my seasoning. But then he had that girlfriend that was jealous of my later, not jealous, but later she was like, yeah, she be flossing like that. So she was my girlfriend, and she was from Eritrea, which is like, it's near around Ethiopia and Somalia, and also near about Kenya. And then when I became a young man, right about that time I was dating her, I was hanging out with this family that I grew up with since my earliest memories, but also again in out of high school and in college, in the neighborhood that I want to reference, that has implications of overtones of famous incidents that anyone watching this video would be familiar with. Some of our experiences in this area played into and were attendant of some of the dynamics that would give us some of our famous heinous atrocities in terms of public slangs by crooked police or by incompetent and or crooked police officers. And but there's a backstory to things. That's why I'm making this long form like that. But you can if you have, and then so we would be hanging out at these parties around there, the parties were by, there was a Kenyan DJ. There's a DJ station here in the Twin Cities called KMOJ, and this apartment that we hung out. It was my best friend from childhood, from my early, that taught me how to ride a bike from before I could ride a bike. My parents had given me like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cassette tape, and my friend and his older brother were old enough to appreciate how vintage that was when I was a young boy, and may have dispossessed me of it when I was a young boy, to show you how far we go back. I have like memories of like kind of like a dream of like playing my new tape, and like they're a little bit older, they're like, what's this? Yeah, this is cold, man. And then I didn't see it again after that. But they were a little bit more seasoned than me and older. But I was close enough in age with them, at least the younger of which, to compete with him, to hold my own with him, and to grow around him. But they had a little bit had to jump on me. But we were hanging out. But when they got their first apartment, it was across the hallway from a DJ from KMOJ called DJ Expect. He was a really cool dude. He would have like parties at his house, and he'd be making beats. He would have all the coolest people, all the street people, anyway. He didn't care who was in his apartment, because it was about the vibe in there. And if you weren't down with the vibe, your ass was out. Street, hip hop, anything, neighbor, anything. If you're cool, it's all good, man. Come, doors wide open, man. We don't give a fuck. We don't even know who's walking in and out. But if you're on that bogus stuff, then your ass is out. But he was like, and you had to dance when you walk in there. Like when they had some music on, you had to dance when you walk into a party like that, because you couldn't be on like some spy vibes or like some gangster time unless you were a dancing gangster. And I'm not saying that those were gangster parties, but it just was about the vibe, and it was like some cool African vibes. So I got to know a little bit about a little bit of Kenyan baseball, like some of your different tribes in Kenya I was familiar with. And then at that time I was hanging out with a friend. I had a lady friend who was a little bit, that girlfriend that I had from Eritrea. We actually were something of chemistry. Like we actually both were both into each other. But then I had another friend that I just liked her as a person, and I was big about Africa. That I still am, but I was big about Africa at that time. This is like early 2000s, first 5 years of the 2000s, and she was from Nigeria. Similar, but I think that's a little bit more west, but it's still northern Africa, like those other countries I referenced. So I got to know a little bit about those tribes, and then my father knows about all that stuff. My father's an actual historian, and he knows all about the baseball of Africa now, then, and before. He can go way back, and he can cite like battles and like he can cite a lot of different stuff. My father can, and like lines of like boundaries of countries and how they were formed. But so my dad probably knows the politics of those countries as well, or better than some of those people that I actually know from those countries since they were young. But all I meant to say is that you spend time with people like that, and you can identify people ethnically to a degree, just by and culturally, just by looking at them. And also, if you went back a ways, you could understand maybe the combination of what someone's dual or or multiple ancestry might be. But then that's also, I want to reference a little bit that would be true, like even of a municipality, is that people from an area can recognize almost people from another part of that same area in their conduct, demeanor, and a little bit of their communication. So I was so I would hang out. So but that apartment. That apartment that we would hang out with, it's actually on the same street that Philando Castile was slain on. It was about, it's no more than just about a mile and a quarter. I'd say you could say that's within 1 mile, give or take, of where Philando Castile was slain. That apartment building sits just on the boundary of Minneapolis in the St. Paul side, as it's dissected by a street, by a highway 280, not the river, like most of St. Paul, Minneapolis, which is called the Twin Cities, as in the baseball team, the Minnesota Twins, named after the Twin Cities. It's a lot of the city is severed, or it's distinguished by the river, but also parts of St. Paul are distinguished from parts of St. Paul by the river. The east St. Paul, downtown St. Paul. St. Paul proper, Highland Park, is separated from what's called the West Side, which is a Hispanic neighborhood. Not overwhelmingly Hispanic, but predominantly Spanish, is the West Side. But it's distinguished by the river, and it's actually somewhat south of the cities. But you wouldn't call it South St. Paul. You would call it. It's north. It's about northwest of South St. Paul, and then if you keep going north, you're in East St. Paul. So it's actually a little bit arbitrary what they call East and West, and I don't know. That's actually goes to my point of some of this video, but so that area though was but that part of the city is segregated, Minneapolis from St. Paul, by city streets, and not entirely by the river. But then as you go down Larpenteur, so Philando Castile was slain on a street called Larpenteur in St. Paul. As you go down that street about a mile, that's where we lost Philando Castile at. And where we lost Philando Castile at was exactly 2 blocks, a little bit less than 2 blocks from one of my first jobs, one of my first real jobs that actually, so I'm now a professional driver, and I have been for about 15 years. But one of those my first jobs as a professional. So the first time I got my training as my first ride along as a professional driver, it had to be my first job as a professional driver was with Jimmy John's in Highland Park. But I got hired up. I had been a clerk at a pharmacy in Highland Park, which is like a well-to-do, predominantly Jewish, Catholic, Irish neighborhood of landed wealth. That's actually where my mother's family's from, Highland proper. There's like a hill, a bluff that might be what Highland is named after. There's a high school right there, and then my mother grew up like maybe a mile from there. And that high school, it's a little bit more of an intimate high school where a lot of those students, they know each other and they're pretty savvy. Like a lot of students from Highland are pretty savvy, and I would imagine a lot of them were successful in life. But it's a little bit different. The schools around here, they feed different areas. So just because someone goes to one school doesn't necessarily mean they're from an area, but that they go to one school would still mean that they would have to do with people that would go to that school. So there can be unique things about people at a school, but not necessarily that they would go to a school. But then so my father recognized this man who was from the same country as him, and then they knew a lot of the same people, because in the country where my father's from, Namibia, it's about the size of Texas, both in population. No, I maybe less in population, but it's about the size of the state of Texas, and it's also very desolate like Texas. My father tells me that when we lived in the Southwest United States, the land of the Southwest reminded him a lot of the land, but also the Spanish language. The land of the Southwest United States gives my father overtones of where he grew up in Namibia, the ruggedness of it, the beauty. New Mexico is called the land of enchantment. Namibia may also be very enchanting in terms of the desert, rugged, the beauty within that. But then my father tells me also that the Spanish language reminds him of the languages that he grew up around, which is interesting, and I want to do an aside about that. So my father speaks a language called Oshi Herero. So Ova means people. Ova Herero is the Herero people that my father is part. My father is half Herero. And then that people suffered an order of genocide that I've referenced in this time. And those actually may have been your original Nazis right there, because the country of Germany, I think that had been like the nation state of Prussia, and there had been a lot of fighting within that. And then Germany, I'm not speaking verbatim. I'm actually, this video, I'm doing my actual, I'm speaking more so of testimony and what my rough understanding of things is, which might actually be a closer approximation and pass at some of my observations that would be of personal experience. And I'm not gonna incorporate research that's outside of my experience for the sake of being accurate in terms of detail, just because that might actually start me leaning about talking about things that I actually wasn't aware of. So I want to keep it I want to keep it as a little bit of testimony with this, or just a witness on the ground of living as a man of color in the Twin Cities, And I don't want to speak to anything that would incriminate myself or anyone else, or that would just make anyone or anything hot. I'm not trying to do that, but I'm just trying to tell a little bit of a story of my own that plays into or correlates with the slayings of Philando Castile and George Floyd. It did not cause it. It did not exactly correspond to it, but it correlates it because I was having similar experiences at the same areas. So. From a childhood and as a young man and as an adult and a professional, but Germany became a nation later than so the Africa itself suffered multiple colonists, almost like they're, I don't mean to be disrespectful with this, but it was as brutal as though these colonists were you say running a train on the resources in the people of Africa. And then also they were likely been putting infrastructure in their trains, no less. So you could say that's a dark pun there, is that they were essentially, for intensive purposes, running a train on Africa and splitting it up like a pie along they were agreeing upon lines of extortion and capitalizing on the human human capital, for lack of a better word, and the physical resources. To this day, a lot of the implications of that, reverberations of that, are at large and viable and active. But back then it was more so arbitrary and black and white. That is redlining, and I want to talk about the purpose of this video that I'm referencing is redlining, and how that would play into the sophistication of the zoning of the Twin Cities, but then also how some of the actual atrocities of Philando Castile and George Floyd may have been attendant of and related to the actual zoning, the redlining, that is the zoning of the Twin Cities, both official, above ground, sanctioned, and de facto of the actual baseball, because you, for any power, you have an above surface and a below surface. The below surface may be more potent, and the above surface is a necessary pretense just to organize social the laws and the say so, and the final foot going down. But and I want to say that the fact that the Twin Cities is the Twin Cities, that is two twins, and the fighting that you would have between siblings and twins, but somewhat of the actual chaos, ambivalence, and tension that you would have by having two cities next to each other across a river might actually feed into the fact that some of our famous slayings, within 4 years, two world-renowned famous slayings, Philando Castile and George Floyd, happened in the Twin Cities, no less, one on either side of those cities. So Philando Castile was slain in St. Paul first, I think that might technically be, I don't know if you would call that Falcon Heights. That's actually significant. He died in a little bit of a black hole in an ambivalent position within St. Paul, where even a St. Paul native might not be sure what you would actually call that. where he passed away, you could roughly speaking, I don't know what the exact point is, technically the county line or the city jurisdiction, but you could, for a Twin Cities native would not be sure if Philando, unless they fact checked it, would not be sure if Philando Castile passed away in St. Paul, Falcon Heights, near New Brighton, Lauderdale, or Roseville. All that converges right there. That's significant that Philando Castile would be pulled over there of all places. That you could actually say that's the most likely place in the Twins for something like what happened to Philando Castile. May heaven have mercy on all of us, and remember all of us and celebrate all of us together at one day of peace. There's actually almost no place more designated and likely that a famous atrocity could take place right there. If you appreciate how many police precincts are right there in Patrol Larpenteur, from a St. Paul native would know that, or not. I myself, if you would have asked me that before that slaying, I would be familiar with that would be a possibility, because I was at one of these parties, these African parties, in about the year 2005. And there's this guy named Victor. He was cool as hell. He was like a big OG, and he wasn't a gangster, but he could get along with any gangster. Like, you could take some gangster people about to go do something gangster, and he would walk in and have everybody laughing, like, and actually near about forget about a mission, how funny he was. Like, there'd be like a table, and I wasn't old enough to drink then, so I would just be like, I was there for the music, but there'd be some ladies there. And my big dog, my friend that I grew up with, that was always breaking my balls in life, because he broke everybody and everything's balls at all times, but he wasn't trying to have me have nothing to drink. Like, we'd be at these African parties and stuff like that, and then me being a little kid, I'd have my eyes on I'd be at a party and he'd be like, hey man, but G ain't gonna drink, man. Because if you take my name is Genie without my first bill, he's like, hey man, that's cool, man. Genie ain't finna have nothing, man. And they're like, man, you finna tell Genie what to do? He's like, hey man, that's cool, man. That's my boy Genie, man. He don't need none of that bullshit, man. My friend, he was actually solid like that, and I want to speak about that. That's significant how he was principled like that among street people in street circumstances. Not that those were street parties, but you have a mixed multitude with people from all kinds of background. In a mixed multitude, he would stand up on a principle, and I think that's actually because his father was a police officer, that is a lawman in Africa. So if you grow up around police officers and lawmen, a lot of them, they are they have an idea of right and wrong, and how different things will play into how if you do something on the wrong foot, your ass is going to end up on the wrong foot. A lawman would know that. A lawman knows that you play with right and wrong, and that's going to fuck you over and whoever you're playing with or on. Everyone's getting fucked over if you start off dishonestly. A lawman would know that. So my friend being raised by an actual lawman, he had principles like that. Now, he wasn't the most honest person or the most forthright at all times, but he did have principles when it came to things like alcohol and stuff like that. He'd be like, nah man, G ain't finna, because he hit 21 before me, but he wasn't trying to let me have no alcohol, because he knew what could come with that, but also he wasn't trying to have me have alcohol. So I want to say props to him for that, props for him for standing up for me not to drink at these parties. But Victor would show up to a party and there'd be like some ladies around the table, and like he would act like, so there's like alcohol galore on the table, right? Like spirits on the table, and he'd pull up with like 2 bottles of spirits, and he'd introduce himself he'd be like, hey, what up, dog? What up? Yeah, man, I'm coming here. Hey, man. So I just want to say, I sit down. I just want to say, hi, my name is Victor, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm about to get fucked up right now. So he would act like he's getting fucked up at an AA meeting. He was funny like that. But I forgot what got me. But one time it was at a party like that, and they were talking about but don't be going down Larpenteur, because so that this time we were at that party, it wasn't at that location on Larpenteur, because this was like a year after like that group of people that would party around there, that it was like a lot of friends, like up to like 5, 10, 15, 20 men of all different backgrounds, young men that would have something to do, be neighbors around a party. It was all good, and it was good vibes, no smoke. There's hardly too much of any bullshit back then, really. That I know of. The only bullshit was actually between my best friend and his own brother, because they were always fighting like brothers do. But there was no bullshit as many people as were around like that. But they're like, don't be going down Larpenteur, because as you go down Larpenteur, Expect explained it, the DJ. He said it funny though. He said it funny, but he was like, you go down. I can't talk like him. He did so much partying that he had a certain way of talking even when he was sober. But he had these big eyes, and he'd be like, you go down Larpenteur, there's at least 5 precincts. 5 precincts. You get pulled over 3 times driving down that street, 1 time on Larpenteur, and then he called out the precincts. He said that in about 2005. So that Philando Castile would be pulled over there on Larpenteur is significant. And then I've been pulled over there with, actually I got up and down there doing deliveries for a long time with Jimmy John's, and it was pretty much smooth sailing and good money at that time. Because when you have that topper on your vehicle, you're a commercial vehicle, and so you actually get some sway. And all the cops that I experienced on Larpenteur were not bad people. So when it comes to getting pulled over by a cop, it's not that they can't. The cop has some discretion in how they're gonna approach you. I would imagine that some of their training is to gauge your conduct and demeanor. Some of, like, you apply for different things, right? Like, you apply for a license, and you have to like do different things online to get different different documents, and you also have to engage with the people there. But like, what are these online security things scanning for? What are potentially the people that are at the DMV? What are they scanning for? But more so, what are the security apparatus scanning for? Not necessarily are you doing something illegal in itself. Is not what would raise concern. The way you're moving. Okay, you just try to open that account 5 times in 10 minutes. You try to do this over here. You try to do this over here. The society is trying to preserve advantage and filter out undesirables. When you are undesirable in this society, you are appreciated, especially in the region where I'm at, Minnesota nice. That is Minnesota elitism, classism, racism. And it's not necessarily upon lines of color, ethnicity. It's deeper than that, the actual lines of segregation, which are still at large and at play to my taste. But what you're being appreciated as vermin, you're really no different than, okay, so all this life is beautiful, right? It's all good. Like, we love God. God is all things, right? But this little rat wants to come over and have some of my lunch. The rat is part of existence. I think rats are cool as hell. I think Master Splinter in the Ninja Turtles was a real master. Now, if you want to know something of Master, find a way to look up the Ninja Turtles and emulate Master Splinter. His attitude, so much love, so much skill, so much badassery is Master Splinter. Shout out Master Splinter. Even shout out Shredder, because Shredder was badass too, and Bebop and Rocksteady, and the Ninja Turtles, and April the reporter. Shout out the whole Ninja Turtles to this day. I was actually just talking to a man last night, and we're from the same range of the 80s, we figured out, and we were like, yeah, you know what's up with that Ninja Turtle life. He's like, hell yeah. And then I also watched a video with Zip with the Drip from New York, and he was like, you could learn something about survival. Zip with the Drip appreciates cats and rats. Shout out Zip with the Drip for that. I'm not trying to clout chase or name drop with that, but he did a video where he appreciates rats as survivalists. Rats will survive damn near anything with the right kind of attitude. They'll eat, if they have to, they'll eat off their own damn foot to get out of a bind, or they'll eat off their own damn foot to get into some food. That's what a rat is. So rats are beautiful as anything. Cockroaches are part. This life wouldn't be viable without cockroaches. But if some vermin, that is something. So I just saw something move like that. Now, if a bunny came up, you wouldn't have a problem with the bunny nipping like that. But if a rat came up, or a cockroach came up, now they're dipping and dodging like that because we've been stepping on them so long. But if they came up like that, we'd have a problem like that, because the way they're moving, they're not necessarily different or not part of this existence. When we're eating all the time, we're filtering the environment. That's what we're on the land for. We rove the land. We consume the fauna and the fauna. That means like plant and animal. fauna and fauna, I think, the plant material. So we come here, we eat this food, it tastes delicious, it gives us sustenance. We travel a little bit according to the weather, and then the animal migrations and patterns that are also part of the weather, and the opportunities of the land that has variations of the weather. And I think that some of our foot traffic might affect the magnetism of the land that affects the weather. But then we go over there and we excrete what we had just consumed over there. So we're filtering the environment, like almost no different than fertilizer. Like you would need fertilizer to shift. What's the purpose of life? To eat shit and be happy. That is filter the environment. So it's really no different that anything would eat anything. But the way it's moving is what people have a problem with. So sometimes when these different security apparatus, or even a police officer is having a problem with someone, it's not necessarily always what you did and didn't do, or that you got around to breaking the law. That you're maneuvering a certain way is significant. And if you were to keep maneuvering that way, it may be likely or imminent, such as this system does not appreciate things that operate that way, that you would one day maybe find yourself forced to break the law. An example is that say you beat to your own drum, and you get off the beaten path because you're not with all this fake ass status quo bullshit. Even in high school, you start to get marginalized, but you still have needs. You still have social needs as a person, as a human being. So then you go to some of these parties. Like I was at these parties, but I was graced that there were some cool people that kept me out of bullshit, and they were more so appreciating that I did sports, and they were wanting me to just get a career or a job under my belt, earn an income, and then figure out what you want to do from there, is what they would say. And respect your parents while you're at it. You can do things right and fuck up, and you likely will do some of both, and probably more fucking up, but respect your parents that whole time, is what they had told me. Then later I came across Tashriq Bey, and he said that he quoted the Bible, is that honor thy father and mother, that they days shall be long on the earth realm. Had I not been honoring my father and mother then, and even to the last couple of days, my ass would not be sitting here under a shade tree. Hell no. Not without honoring my parents. Hell no. It wouldn't have happened like that. But then you get around these parties, and then you start to become friends with this one and that one, and then you may want to puff on this or hang out with this, and you do one little misstep, you do one little egregious thing, and now you're in somebody's pocket because now you're associated with someone, or they know something about you, or you know something about them, or they get to feeling like you owe them something. Now they're hard up for cash or money, but they do things differently than other people do, and they don't have the same scruples and morals as you do, as your better judgment, because they're already under the influence of stuff, or they've compromised their own better judgment back then, and now they're on a pattern and sequence of compromising morality. Now they put you up to some bullshit, and now you're in between a rock and a hard place, because either you're in between them, which a lot of times your people can become your ops as fast as they were your people. It's appreciated by some people, or you're up between the authorities who are practicing this and versed in this, and they've been studying how this bullshit goes down for centuries. So they're actually the authorities are actually professional criminals. They can butter you up just like a professional. They can get you to stick your foot in your mouth like a professional. They can get you to contradict yourself like a professional, and they can actually through asking the right questions, like a cross-examiner was, they can get you into a position where you cannot actually falsify a statement unless you perjure yourself. So they can actually get you skillfully enough where you must tell on your comrades or compatriots, whatnot, because of the way they maneuvered you verbally. They've been at it a long time. The criminals, the so-called criminals, and the so-called cops might actually be the real good cop, bad cop, and it can change. The criminals can be more upright and moral in certain sense, even like showing love to someone that's an outcast, and the police officers can be as corrupt and wicked. So it's just like good cop, bad cop, and it goes back and forth, but it's a hell of a place to be for anyone. So all I meant to say is that but that you would be moving a certain way is significant to someone that's about laws. So when a police officer pulls you over, it's not only what you have gone around to breaking or not breaking, or doing right or doing wrong, but how you're maneuvering, how you were driving. Yeah, you didn't actually break a law, but you were driving maybe you were varying your speed. So you didn't speed, and you didn't. So there's a speed limit of 55 and a minimum of 40. You didn't go above 55, you didn't go below 40, and you didn't swerve, but you were varying your speed in a way that's different. that could get you pulled over like that, because you're moving differently. So it's the way you're moving, not exactly what you're doing, not doing, but it's also the way you communicate when you get pulled over. So I would get pulled over by my friend, with my friend, because he actually had a visual deprivation, so he would actually make a lot of mistakes driving, and he got his ass pulled over a lot. And it was actually kind of dangerous that I would drive with him, because he had very limited vision, but he wanted to drive, and his father was savvy that he somehow got the provision to drive with the license, but he had a stipulation on there. But he get pulled over a lot. But he was smooth with the cops. He was smooth with everyone in life, but he was smooth with the cops because he never, since the first contact, the first impression, he had confidence in himself, and the cops were more so qualifying themselves to him because he was confident. He trusted himself and the cop because his father was a cop, and the cop would qualify to him like, "Hey man, what's up, man?" And he didn't code switch, but he would be very very smooth with the cop. So I actually appreciated how to engage in banter, not banter, but I appreciated how to be respectful with the cop and be compliant while also being exerting your own presence as the bearing of a man. You can do that a little bit by some of your verbal gestures and your attitude and tone, but not the same with all cops. So what I said in this video is that not all cops are good or bad, and some cops actually will let you. If there's leeway or there's a little give or take, some cops will give you a little to let you take your ass out of somewhere. And I don't mean to say that disrespectfully, ass like that, because sometimes cops can be very heinous, like the actual the episodes I'm talking about. But I was trying to be funny, but that actually wasn't. This isn't a video for funny. So I want to humble myself, and I want to ask. I want to ask for grace with that attempt at humor, because that wasn't funny. But sometimes a cop can let you go by. So it's not that a cop can't show you favor, but you can't count on a cop to show you favor is what is going on, I think. But if you can be more so, if you have decent conduct in life, like that friend of mine that I was referencing, he actually was interested in church, and he's the one who introduced me to a relationship with God in high school. He taught. I had always had this sensation around trees growing up in the Southwest that something of this existence is really deep.